This is Greece, a country of just 10 million people, with an economy smaller than that of Ohio, and yet they're the ones running the fleet that moves the entire planet's goods more than any other country. Greek ship owners haul 19% of the global cargo carrying capacity through their 5,800 vessels. What's even crazier is that 98% of Greek shipping capacity moves cargo between other countries. So this is a nation that dominates the trade of a world it hardly takes part in. It makes no sense, but it's true. So how did they do this? Well, first, we need to look at how its geography is intertwined with its history. 92% of Greece's borders are coastline. The country is scattered across more than 6,000 islands, 227 of them inhabited, and the Aegean between them worked like a sea road, with no island ever fully out of sight of another shore. Greece also sat at the crossroads of the entire ancient Mediterranean, right between Asia, Italy, Egypt, and the Balkans. So for these island communities, trading by sea wasn't a career choice. It was the only economy that existed, and they'd been doing it for thousands of years. Now, over the centuries, this turned into something far more organized. From the 16th century, Greek ships started carrying grain to Western Europe, including a booming illicit grain trade that made some families seriously rich. Specific islands became shipping powerhouses, places like Hydra, Andros, and Chios, and out in the Ionian Sea, Kefalonia and Ithaca. And because they were trading under a foreign empire rather than an independent Greek state, they had no national flag to fly, so they flew other people's. After the Russo-Turkish Wars, the Treaty of Küçük-Kaynarca in 1774 let Eastern Orthodox Christians of the Ottoman Empire, basically Greeks, sail under the Russian flag, and later the British one, on far better terms. The way these island families operated set the template for everything that came after. Take the Oinousses, a tiny cluster of islands near Chios, for example. They started as shepherds who settled the place in the 18th century, but the island was way too small and too rocky to sustain them that way for long. So they turned to the sea, and by 1848, they were building their own ships. By the end of the 19th century, this one small clan owned 160 vessels trading across the Mediterranean and the Black Sea. Boys started out as sailors and sent their wages home. The families pooled the money, bought an old boat, crewed it with their own relatives, and reinvested every profit into the next ship. Knowledge got passed down by blood, not school. To this day, ship owners from Chios and Oinousses alone control over 40% of all Greek shipping, which works out to roughly 10% of the entire world's capacity. These islanders were so serious about it that they founded the world's oldest nautical academy on Hydra back in 1749. But for all that history, Greece was still mostly carrying other people's cargo on other people's terms. The leap that made them truly dominant came right after the worst disaster in their shipping history. When World War II hit, Greece threw its merchant fleet behind the Allies, over 600 steamships hauling supplies across war zones. The cost was brutal. The war destroyed about 70% of the Greek merchant fleet. By the time it ended, Greece was down to around 150 ships. And it looked like the end. But then came the opportunity of the century. See, to win the war, the United States had built ships at a pace nobody had ever witnessed. 2,710 cargo vessels called Liberty ships churned out so fast that at peak they were finishing one every 8 hours. When the war ended, America suddenly had a mountain of surplus ships and no use for them. So in 1946, Congress passed the Ship Sales Act, letting these vessels be sold off for cheap, for cash or credit, to allied governments and individual ship owners. Most of the world wasn't as interested, but the Greeks went all in. 98 of the surplus Liberty ships were sold to Greek buyers, more than to any other single nation, with the Greek government stepping in to guarantee the loans, which was insanely important because these owners had just lost most of their fleets in the war, so they didn't have the cash on hand to buy outright. And those ships turned out to be money machines. Many were delivered just before the Korean War sent freight rates through the roof. A single charter run from the US to Japan could pay for the entire vessel. One famous shipping magnate, George P. Livanos, perfected the move. Buy a war surplus Liberty, send it on a single charter from the US to Japan that paid back the whole purchase, then sell the ship to Japanese scrappers, where the scrap value alone was pure profit. For years afterwards, Greek ship owners kept buying Liberty ships second-hand, eventually acquiring 526 of the 835 that entered post-war cargo service. This is the moment that made the legends of Greek shipping, the men the press called the Golden Greeks. And the most famous of them barely fit the quiet family island mold at all. Aristotle Onassis was a refugee. His family fled the burning of Smyrna in 1922, when the Greek population was driven out of the city, and he rebuilt his life in Argentina, making his first million in tobacco by the age of 25. 7 years later, in 1932, his father died, and he turned to shipping. He bought 6 freight ships from the Canadian Steamship Company for a fraction of their actual value in the midst of the Great Depression. Then he went further. In 1938, he ordered the Ariston, making him the first Greek to own a tanker. And he invented a financing trick that changed the whole industry. Instead of borrowing against the value of the ship, he borrowed against its future. He'd sign a long-term charter with a major oil company, and that guaranteed income, not just the ship itself, became the collateral, with the charter payments going straight to the bank. It let him own a supertanker outright in 7 years instead of 20. So when the Suez Crisis shut the canal in 1956 and everyone scrambled for tankers, Onassis had idle ships ready to go and could basically name his price. He cleared around $70 million that year, which is over $800 million today. His great Greek rival Stavros Niarchos played the exact same game. In 1935, he talked his uncles into buying 6 British freighters at Depression bargain prices. He lost 6 ships in the war, took the $2 million in insurance money he received, and threw it right in the Liberty ship program, snapping up a big chunk of them. By the mid-1960s, he personally owned around 80 vessels, the largest privately owned fleet on Earth. Now, you might be wondering why Greek families specifically kept winning at this, rather than people from other, much richer countries. And, well, another big reason comes down to how they're structured. Most Greek shipping companies are private, family-owned, and unlisted, and they fight to keep it that way. No stock market listing means no shareholders demanding a dividend every 3 months, no board panicking over one bad quarter, and no hostile takeover. The owners answer to themselves and their children. It changes the math completely. A Greek family firm can think in generations. So when freight rates collapse and a 5-year slump arrives, the kind of slump that bankrupts a public competitor, the Greek family can just hold. Patience itself becomes the weapon. Which leads us to the single move at the center of Greek dominance. They buy when everyone else sells. Stavros Livanos, George's uncle, who built his entire fleet on cash and never took a loan, which left him flush with money to scoop up distressed ships when the Depression wiped everyone else out, is the perfect example. Then between 1983 and 1987, Greek ship owners bought second-hand ships at prices about 86% below the 1980 peak. When the 2009 financial crisis crushed the industry, the Greeks had cash ready and bought again. In 2015, with the market still weak, Greek owners spent over $7 billion on second-hand ships and ordered 160 new ones, making them the top buyers in the world. Repeat that across generations, and it compounds into a fleet nobody can match. But here's something genuinely strange about Greek shipping. Most of it isn't actually in Greece. The offices are in London, Singapore, and Hong Kong, and the ships themselves mostly fly foreign flags. In 2024, 87% of Greek-owned tonnage was registered under another country's flag. Today, the biggest ones are Liberia and the Marshall Islands, followed by Malta, with only about 10% of the fleet actually flying the Greek flag. In total, the Greek-owned fleet sails under more than 30 different flags. This is what's known in the industry as flying a flag of convenience. And the reason is pretty simple. Registering a ship in Liberia or the Marshall Islands means lower taxes, lighter labor rules, and the freedom to hire crews from anywhere at almost any wage. The ownership stays Greek, the paperwork just goes wherever it's cheapest. The Greeks pioneered doing this at scale. Onassis built an entire web of 164 Panamanian and 19 Liberian companies, one separate company for each ship, so that if a single vessel ran into legal or financial trouble, it couldn't drag down the rest. Effectively, the Greeks invented the modern global shipping company, a business based everywhere and taxed almost nowhere. It's the same instinct their ancestors had flying Russian and British flags 200 years earlier. They just perfected it. Now, I think it's important to clarify exactly what I mean by Greece dominating in global shipping, because it can be confusing. It's not that they have the most merchant ships by sheer amount, but it's specifically deadweight tonnage, which is the total weight of cargo a ship can carry. Greek owners control around 20% of this globally, roughly 426 million tons of cargo capacity sitting on the water at any given moment. And what they're moving is the stuff that keeps supply chains around the world working. Iron ore, coal, grain, crude oil, liquefied natural gas. But if you want to look at the amount of ships they own specifically, here's a good chart. These numbers put them second in dry bulk and oil tankers behind China, and second in LNG carriers behind Japan. Though their tanker fleet alone is worth around $77 billion, the most valuable on the planet. The average Greek ship is about 86,000 deadweight tons, nearly double the global average, because they go big on dense, heavy cargo. So why these trades specifically? Well, it fits how Greeks have always operated. Bulk and tanker shipping mostly runs on what's called the tramp model, which means no fixed routes and no set schedule. A tramp ship just chases the best rate, port to port, wherever the cargo happens to be. There's no brand to build and no global logistics network to maintain. It's pure trading instinct, knowing when to charter, when to hold, and when to move. And the Greeks have been traders working in exactly this way for centuries. It fits the family fur model perfectly, and all of this pours an absurd amount of money into a tiny country. Shipping makes up close to 8% of Greece's entire economy. Over the decade from 2012 to 2022, it brought roughly 148 billion euros into Greece from abroad, a figure equal to about 42% of the government's entire national debt. It supports around 160,000 jobs. And remember, this was happening during the exact years Greece nearly went bankrupt and needed international bailouts just to survive. While the rest of the economy was collapsing, shipping never stopped earning. So now we come to the modern day, and the picture gets a lot more complicated. On one hand, the Greeks are doubling down harder than ever. As of 2026, they have around 725 ships under construction, worth roughly $60 billion. That order book is like 7 times bigger than it was in 2021, but the pressure is building from a few directions at once. Obviously, China, which is undisputedly a top 2 superpower nation, is a big factor here. In 2023, they actually overtook Greece as the world's largest ship owner by gross tonnage, a measure of total ship volume, ending a full decade of Greek leadership on that particular metric. Greece still leads in deadweight tonnage, the cargo carrying measure that matters most for the heavy bulk and tanker trades it dominates. But the gap is closing, and China isn't just another competitor. It's the world's largest shipbuilder, with a massive network of ports and a fast-growing ship finance industry behind it. On the surface, both countries run enormous fleets. But China's fleet is essentially state-backed national logistics, built to move cargo to and from China itself. The Greek fleet is private, commercially neutral, and works for everyone, which is exactly why 98% of what it carries never touches a Greek port. One is a country moving its own goods, the other is a country moving everyone else's. The second pressure is environmental. The International Maritime Organization, the UN body that regulates global shipping, is pushing the industry toward net zero emissions by around 2050, with hard cuts along the way. The EU has already started charging ships for their carbon. For the Greek fleet, the compliance cost in 2026 alone is estimated at over $800 million. 7 of the largest Greek shipping companies have warned that the new rules could roughly double their fuel costs. So what are the Greeks doing about it? Exactly what you'd expect. They're betting early. Greek owners have already built the world's largest alternative fuel-capable fleet, and over half the tonnage in their order book is designed to run on cleaner fuels, mostly LNG. It's the same play as always. Bet on the next standard before your rivals commit, and be holding the right ships when the cycle finally turns. Whether it pays off this time is genuinely an open question. On top of all that, disruptions in the Red Sea and the Black Sea are scrambling the world's shipping routes. The kind of chaos that, historically, the Greeks have actually thrived in. That's how a country of 10 million people, with no factories to supply and no real market of its own to feed, ended up building the thing that moves everyone else's goods. So the real question was never how Greece came to dominate shipping. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more content just like this. I'll see you in the next one.